In this Diablo 4 video, we're going to be taking a look at what you should do after you complete the main campaign. What is there to do after that? What you should prioritize, what you should focus on in order to get the most out of your time spent so that you can complete everything that you want to do. So the first thing you're going to do after you finish the main campaign is try and get to level 50 if you're not there already. If you finish the campaign and you're well over level 50, this is not going to be a problem for you. But the dungeon you need to do, called the Cathedral of Light, the capstone dungeon that's in the northern part of Kyovashad, is enemies in that dungeon are about 50 or so. They're like 52, 53, something like that. You're going to struggle in that dungeon if you are not around level 50. So go get your level up to that if it's not. If it's already there, that's fine. If it's higher, that's fine. Once you've done that, you want to go into that dungeon and complete that dungeon. That's going to allow you to go to tier 3, where most of the endgame activities are available to you. Now, once there are really 3 activities for you to do. There are Tree of Whispers quests, there are Helltides that appear periodically, and there are nightmare dungeons that you're going to farm. The Tree of Whispers basically gives you random objectives around certain zones of the game that keep moving around. And what these are kind of like bounties: kill a monster, kill a bunch of monsters, run a dungeon, etc. And if you get enough points, each one of these activities is worth a certain amount of points. You're going to take it back to the Tree of Whispers and redeem it for a cache of goods. Sometimes this is like 2-handed weapons, or it might be a chest piece, and sometimes you get like a higher roll cache that has even better gear, so you want to make sure you get that when you can. But you can do this to get gear, and this is an easy way to get some good gear if you are struggling with your gear when you first get to World Tier 3. And you'll need to do this at least one time in order to get a Nightmare Sigil, which will allow you to enter a Nightmare Dungeon. And Nightmare Dungeons are essentially special versions of regular dungeons that you have to consume a sigil to create, and these are in your consumables tab of your inventory. And these take a specific dungeon and convert it into a tier of a Nightmare Dungeon. You start at Nightmare Tier 1, and you're going to go through this dungeon with some sort of buff, but also negative effects. Maybe like enemies explode when they die, or maybe something follows you around and drops lightning from the sky periodically. There are a slew of different negative and positive effects you'll gain while running these dungeons that will make them more challenging. And there are a couple reasons why you want to do Nightmare Dungeons. First is the fact that these dungeons are regularly filled with large groups of elites, like 4, 5, 6 elite groups at a time of these monsters, the ones that are always dropping rares for you typically out in the landscape, or sometimes you ran into 2 or 3 of them, or 1 or 2 of them in regular dungeons. They're here in abundance, and that increases your chances of getting legendaries from killing these enemies, because the more you kill, the more chance you have. It's just a numbers game, so it's a very good source of legendary items. Additionally, completing one of these dungeons will allow you to assign experience points to one of your Paragon glyphs, allowing you to make it stronger and stronger, and I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So as you pass 50 and you progress in the Paragon system, you're going to put points on your Paragon board, gaining extra stats, and periodically you'll come to sockets on these boards that allow you to slot glyphs that have different effects, and these glyphs are just loot drops that you'll randomly get from doing different activities in the game, like doing Tree of Whispers or doing Nightmare Dungeons. And when you have one that you like, you're going to slot it into that board, and the effect on it can get stronger and stronger the more you level it up. And you can assign it to whichever glyph you want, even if it's not the one you're using. Maybe you plan to try some other glyph and you want to level it up, that's fine. You can do whatever you want to do there. But the higher level you go in the Nightmare tiers, the more experience you gain for those glyphs. So obviously the enemies are going to get higher level, they're going to be harder, they're going to take you, a better build to get through, but you'll get more experience to level up those glyphs, making it faster to reach higher and higher levels of them. So your objective here should be to farm legendaries. You should be farming sacred legendaries. If you didn't know, World Tier 3 has a new version of equipment called Sacred. And this is essentially better versions of everything that you've seen before. So if you get a sacred rare, or a sacred magic item, or a sacred legendary, it's basically just a slightly better version of what you were getting before. So your objective should be, besides improving these glyphs and getting experience for them, making them stronger, should be leveling up and also replacing all of your current legendaries with sacred versions of the ones you want for your build, because they'll be slightly better. You can also upgrade these types of equipment one more time than you can regular legendaries. Normally you can upgrade legendaries 4 times at like the blacksmith or the jeweler, but you can upgrade sacred 5 times, and this allows you to really get some more oomph out of their bonuses. And next we come to Helltides, which are kind of a random event that happens in one particular zone of a map, usually that lasts for like 90 minutes or 2 hours or something like that. And you're going to go into these zones, and there's going to be like souped up enemies and meteors coming down. There's also rare crafting materials that you can only find during Helltides there, which you'll want so that you can tinker with your equipment. So you should definitely spend some time doing Helltides. And what you're going to do in these Helltides is kill enemies, and you're going to gain a resource that then allows you to open chests that have like pretty much a guaranteed Sacred Legendary drop. It's not 100% because I've opened some before that didn't have one, but it's like 80 to 90% likely that you're going to get a Sacred Legendary. And these chests have varying amounts on them based on what they are. Like a piece of armor is cheaper, for example, than, you know, a two-handed weapon is or a piece of jewelry is. So you're going to have to decide based on what you can see on your map and the time you have remaining what you want to get out of these chests. And you're going to start farming enemies, killing them, killing bosses, doing events inside them in order to gain as much of this resource as you can and spend them to get legendaries. Keep in mind, though, that you got to be very careful when you're in this area. There are extremely powerful bosses that are much higher level than you. The first time I was there, I ran into a level 72 boss and I was level 50. And I did like no damage and I had to run away. So you can get killed very easily, and you want to avoid dying at all costs in Helltides because you lose half of your currently accumulated resource when you die there. So if like you have like 150 of this item and you're about ready to go to your chest and you die, well, now you have 75. So it's always a good idea to spend this resource as you get enough for what you want. That way you guarantee yourself that legendary rather than trying to save up as much as you can and then go on a spending spree. And the next thing you're going to notice is world bosses. These appear after you finish the campaign, and you're going to be able to do these with groups of other players, whether you're in a group with them or just around them, doesn't really matter what. But you'll see like a marker on your map with like a world boss countdown timer when they appear, and it's usually 30 minutes, and you need to go to that location and be there when it starts, or join in the middle if you're lucky, and help take that down. And you get like a weekly chest for doing one world boss that has a bunch of legendary items in it and some crafting materials, and then you'll also get a guaranteed legendary drop from the world boss. So you definitely want to do those every time you see them if you're on. It's a great way to get guaranteed legendaries. It's fun to play with other players a little bit, and they're not too difficult in my experience. I think we have not failed one yet, so it's almost guaranteed loot. And then lastly, you're going to want to go around doing side quests, making sure that you've conquered all the strongholds and discovering all the altars of Lilith and stuff. If you didn't do all that when you went through the game, which you probably didn't, and this is going to give you reputation with the different factions of the game, and you're going to want to make sure you have at least rank 3 of this in order to have all the skills and potions that you need. This will help you with your nightmare dungeons. But you're going to want to continue on past this at some point, because as you reach the last rank in these reputations in these different regions, you're going to gain 4 Paragon points per region. That is a lot of Paragon points when you add it together. That is 20 Paragon points. That is not a small amount of Paragon points, and Paragon system is what's going to make your character a lot stronger as you get to the higher 70, 80 levels of the game. And once you reach level 70 or so and you feel confident, you can go do the Fallen Temple Capstone Dungeon in the Dry Steppes. And once completing this, it will allow you to change to the World Tier difficulty 4, allowing you to do the Torment difficulty of the game, which has more difficult enemies. It gives you more experience, obviously, so you can level up faster. And there are new items called Ancestral items, which are basically like a more powerful version of Sacred, like Sacred was to the regular version. And there are also new uniques to find on this difficulty that you cannot find on World Tier 3. So that's a general idea of what things you want to do when you get to endgame. I highly recommend doing some Tree of Whispers or Whispers of the Dead quests until you feel confident with good enough gear. Or, doing a couple of them and then going into a Nightmare Dungeon, trying it, seeing where you're at. If you're struggling a little bit, doing more Whispers of the Dead stuff. And if you're doing okay, then continue on doing Nightmare Dungeons to get better and better gear. And maybe mixing it up every now and then with a Helltide or doing some questing to get some more reputation with certain factions again to get those skill points and get those Paragon points eventually as well. And one thing that I want to mention is on the higher difficulties of the game, don't neglect your resistances and defense. A lot of the early game is spent on getting the best offensive aspects, making your character really crank out the DPS because killing enemies faster is a good strategy, and that's true of endgame as well. But enemies here hit harder. They hit much, much harder, so don't neglect your resistances. Don't neglect your armor. Make sure that you have some good defensive aspects on your gear when you go into these dungeons, or you will have a hard time at some point. It might not be the first couple dungeons you go into, but you will hit a wall, and it's usually because you've neglected the defensive part of your build. So make sure you have good defensive skills, good resistances and armor, and make sure you have some good legendary aspects that'll get you out of a bad situation. So that wraps up our endgame guide, kind of giving you ideas of what you should focus on when you get there. And obviously, once you complete the main campaign, if you have any other alt characters or you want to create a new class, or different class of character, you can skip the campaign and start going right into the Whispers of the Dead activities on your new character. You'll do this at a lower tier of the game because this activity is available at any tier. But you'll still be able to do that, which will allow you to gain experience and, have some other activities to do besides just doing dungeons and side quests for experience. So there is some, a little bit of a help there if you do decide to skip the main campaign on those characters. And to do that, you'll just go to the menu and click Skip Campaign on those characters, even if they already exist and you were already made progress with them when you finish the campaign on the other character. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you guys are enjoying Diablo 4 as much as I am. I can't wait to get out more content, so stay tuned for that.